Well, hey guys, Paul's here from VPI Academy, back for you guys with another episode of Futurecast. Today with me is Dejan Radic coming from Resolver Sys. So we're very much welcoming to have you today with us, Dejan.
Hey, Paul. I'm really glad to be the part of this podcast series and really glad to talk about today's topic.
Right. So before we kick start on the topic, which you greatly suggest us on the data crowdsourcing, walk us through your background. So how did you first entering into the Web3 space, and how do you coming on now as CTO of Resolver Sys?
Well, I was software engineer, and in 2016, I started some mining experiments with Bitcoin, and after that, taught a lot about Ethereum ecosystem. Then started working as a smart contract developer in 2017, and slowly, step by step, built my knowledge in the area of Web3 in general, and also AI and so on. And lately also focusing a lot on data privacy, which brought me to a position of being a CTO at Resolver, where we do a lot of cutting edge innovation and technology implementations for different kinds of clients, also building some of the systems and some of the products of ourselves by utilizing novel technologies in different kinds of ways in order to achieve some kind of, like competitive advantage, some kind of innovation in the field, which is kind of bringing something new to the customers.
Right. Very happy to hear you that a lot of, to give you some context into our audience that listening for this podcast, a lot of them are developers and builders that are coming in either from Web 2 or that are in Web 3 that we have supported over the years, helping them working with different ecosystem. And the theme of this podcast that we're doing is Web 3 and AI. This great intersection would allow us to tap into the developer coming from both sides. So great topic that we have talked about with previous speaker, specifically on AI, is on GPU renting. Some of them are on similar topic of data and AI model training. Today, obviously, with you giving us a suggestion on the great topic of data crowdsourcing. So just for fundamental and to set the scene for our audience here who may not be understanding about data crowdsourcing, give me a brief explanation on what is it and what inspired you to share this topic with me today.
Well, when we talk about the general concept of AI, basically the most important thing is data, and people who are holding data have the ability to train the models and actually have greater accuracies of the responses based on that data. So it's really important to have some kind of way of utilizing different kinds of data available in order to train the models in most suitable way, as people would say. So most important thing right now to consider is that at some point we are going to run out of data to train the models. And some people are predicting it would be in the next 3 to 4 years. So most probably at some point we would need to crowdsource as much as data as we can from different kinds of sources, even private ones, in order to have better responses and more accuracy and to have, the progress of the Gen AI field in general, not just Gen AI, but whole AI field and all supervised learning algorithms in general, depending on data in any kind of case. So data crowdsourcing enables people to actually monetize their data and to enable bigger systems to have greater underlying base knowledge to give proper responses and to actually make better generation of the content further on.
Right. Very curious. You said that at one point we can run out data to train for AI model, and specifically you said it's got to be predicting within the next 3 or 4 years. Is there existing discussion that also of having like similar conclusion you having right now? Like, what are the example that you can give me to further elaborate on this?
Well, you can track, for example, lately the biggest futurists or futurologists saying different kinds of predictions regarding AI. There are many of them speaking from like having AGI in 227 to like 250 and so on. So we have Ray Kurzweil with his new book Singularity is Nearer, who says that we are going to have some kind of asymptotic moments within the data. Also, you can track situational awareness from Leopold Aschenbrenner, who predicted it to run out also in a couple of years. So there are some kind of underlying moments where we can predict that data that is available in general to the population, to everybody, is already utilized to train the models, and some of the data that we like do not see online, but there are some kind of archives and so on, they are also being utilized. So in general, data utilization as a concept is also really interesting from the standpoint of AI in general.
Right. Obviously, we hearing this topic of data is for a lot of people also telling me it's a new type of oil and basically gold for this economy. So, in your view and in your experience, what does this mean basically from your perspective, and how does data is the new oil is affecting our world as a whole? How does this affecting how we operate as businesses?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because when you look from the standpoint of having the data and utilizing it, if you put it in use, usually, for example, when you look from the past, what have we done with the data? We have indexed it in order to have better search. Then, like Google came and then it created inverted indexes, Google PageRanks, and so on. So we had greater abilities to do the search across, like the biggest distributed database in the world that we have, that is actually the internet. Now, blockchain technologies came, which enabled Web3, which enabled also some kind of monetization opportunities. And we also have, the next step of having like a system where we can monetize the data in general. So training of the models is getting cheaper and cheaper. So at some point, it won't be about training. It would be about data. In general, we can say, like counterwise, that those who own hardware are going to be the ones who are going to benefit the most if we go in the race towards, like $1 trillion cluster and having the most of the data in use in order to train the biggest foundational models out there. On the other hand, we have some other people saying that we should go towards, like mixture of experts, smaller agents, smaller systems that work in particular field, that are specialized in their own field, like people are, for example. Somebody is good in one thing, somebody is good in something else. So in general, in cooperation, people bring more to the table. So yes, we can say that the value of the data is going to rise. What we have in the public domain or in the public space that's published, it's already utilized. So what about the private data? And now we come to the question of how to run it, how to use it, how to incentivize the people to put that data in use. Because if we talk, like about incentivization of them,
Right.
like giving that data for further training, we are talking about putting that particular data in use. So that means enabling the computation based on that data.
Right. And what would you categorize as private data? Or some example that you can give us right now on what are some type of like private data that you see in businesses or people that are using it and it is being underutilized. And based on your experience, how would you recommend it? People start using it basically correctly.
Well, we can see private data exactly as you've described it. So basically, you have people, you have individuals on one side, and you have organizations on the other. Usually, regarding people, we have laws, for example, like GDPR in Europe, HIPAA in US, and also in Argentina, and in some parts of the world, where we are kind of, like creating the legislation in order to define what the private data is. So in general, we can say it's first, last name, email, like date of birth, IP address, that
Right.
used in order to actually identify you. So we have these laws in power for like roughly 6 years, 7 years, so on, and systems are being created in order to like cover this part of the private data from the individuals. But on the other hand, as I said, like you have organizations. Those organizations are having data in different kinds of places, at different kinds of levels of structuring, at different kinds of level of access. So, like those organizations are utilizing that data in different kinds of ways. The thing is that usually within the organizations, their private data is usually tied to their business, to their customers, to their way of operating, to some kind of level of innovation they're having internally, to patents, to anything. So it is really important to have a sense that that data can be further on utilized, or you can even go further from organizational level and combine the data from different organizations in order to have better models and solve different kind of issues, where we can talk about federated learning, different kinds of systems for privacy preserving, machine learning, and so on.
Right. I've seen some platform where it allows people or some enterprises to basically sell data that they are collected just passively, and they are not actively using it to on their business model. And then they're selling this data. So the question is, what is the ownership of this data gonna look like? Would this platform will now be the owner of this data, and this platform can now sell this data to other needed party? Or would this my company, let's say, now I'm the uploading of this data, would I still get the contribution and ownership for this data? What is your view on this?
Well, in general, if you're selling data, and that's the old concept, like 25 years old, even more, like you have some kind of data, it has value to somebody, like there's a marketplace, somebody can buy it. If somebody buys it, he can copy it and so on. So usually we use contracts or legislation to say, okay, like you can use it, your organization can use it, but you cannot distribute it further. So any kind of software-wise intellectual property also relies to the data, because if you look like the software, it's also the data, but the set of instructions. If you have the data, like something that's utilized in order to execute some instructions and computation on top of it, you're actually like enabling it to be sold to somebody. But now, for example, what if somebody says, okay, I want my data to be utilized in some kind of way, but somebody might need only a portion, or that kind of data can be combined with some other data from other organization, where that kind of combination would give value to somebody, where we can together have some kind of, like earnings based on it. So that's where we are opening a lot of, like questions regarding keeping the privacy while having the data in use. Usually, for example, if you want to protect the data at rest, so you're placing it somewhere on some kind of storage, you encrypt it, you have the key, anybody that access it actually can see only the encrypted data. If you are doing the data in communication, I send you something encrypted, you can, like decrypt it. If you have the key, anybody in the middle, like man in the middle listening and trying to do some kind of eavesdropping activity, he cannot, like see anything that's valuable to him. But if we put data in use, the issue is that we need to decrypt the data in order to do the computation. But now with some advancements in technology, so we have confidential computing with enclaves and trusted execution environments, Intel SGX and solutions similar to that, enabling us to actually have hardware level protection where the data comes encrypted. We do some kind of computation based on it. Data comes out encrypted. So that's one of the solutions. One of the cryptographic solutions to this is, for example, homomorphic encryption, where we can execute some kind of operations on top of data, even though the data is encrypted. So we can effectively outsource the computation to some kind of cloud, to some kind of non-trusted environment. Cloud can be trusted, but like for clouds, they usually say they're honest but curious. So like if somebody can access your data, but he's protected by some kind of means of authentication, it's fine. But like what's the level of some administrator saying, oh, let's see what's happening here, and doing some kind of selects on our SQL DB and seeing some kind of data, So it's about trust and it's about contracts still. But with Web3 space, we have trustless systems. And now how to do the combination of privacy enhancing technologies and general kind of Web3 incentivization concepts with the AI levels of using different kinds of algorithms to process the data, create models or like indexes of data in order to have some kind of, like ability to have more precision regarding the outputs of the computation that is being done on that kind of data. So those are bigger questions. And I think the next steps within the Web3 space are going to be around utilizing different kinds of technology primitives in order to solve these kinds of challenges.
Right. I'm very curious that you bring up FSE because during our past interaction with speaker coming from Token 2049 and recently DevCon as well, some of them are VC that are actually bring up the question of the feasibility of FSE within current AI training model. Is this something that we are seeing other Web3 company that are implementing, or this is still on a theoretical aspect of how we can implementing it?
Usability wise, we need to be honest. It's still a technology that's being built and the performance is the biggest issue. So if we want to utilize it, we're talking about several orders of magnitude slower computation. So effectively, you're, as always, like within the privacy and security, you have privacy and security on one side, you have utility on the other, you're balancing it out, with this kind of system, like you're holding a bigger security and the ability to actually execute calculations on some kind of outsourced environment, but your utility is lower because of the performance. There are some kind of FHE, fully homomorphic encryption implementations happening nowadays, where, for example, there are startups implementing ERC20 tokens that are fully homomorphically encrypted. Some banks are doing some kind of like proof of concepts, how to, for example, how they do not have to know how much their customers are holding on their bank accounts. So that is one of those things where we are going to see some improvements, but most probably this technology would need a significant jump in performance while keeping the same level of security in order to be more utilized. So that's why majority of the companies right now are going to confidential computing and trusted execution environments. There are also, like confidential computing enabling technologies around NVIDIA and their own hardware in order to achieve it in most convenient way.
Right. So coming back to the topic of we have talked about private data, but on the public side, on the public data side, one of the reasons I'm curious about public data because I first interacted with this topic of data coming from talking with Story Protocol. If you know about them, their key problem that they bring up at the time was some of the user that they know are artists or musicians that are creating IP work that are being stolen for artists is being stolen by generative AI that can generate AI pictures, and for music as well, their music is being taken away without them knowing, and then this AI model are generating like AI music for free, and they are not credited for it. They know this is their work, but they cannot prove that is their work because the AI is only taking sampling of each of us. So I'm curious because you did said that, hey, we did academia, right? We have academic research, we have plagiarism detection, we have different citation tracking system to ensure that the academic work of the researcher is rewarded and is recognized. Is this something that we can implement within the AI world and the data world so that we can ensure that these content creator, these contributor of data is being recognized and actually more can contribute data for the ecosystem?
Well, when talking about the public data in general, like we always question who is the owner, like whose intellectual property is the data of. As you mentioned with the artist, they're creating some work, basically is their own work, and they should be able to selectively choose who is going to utilize their work further on. So as everything in our lives, like if we publish it to the public domain, it's out there. Like a lot of systems can copy that data in their own storage, and our ability to actually delete it depends only currently on some kind of laws in some kind of countries and so on. So if we keep the data private, if we keep our own lives private, anything private, we are selectively revealing those kinds of information and that kind of data about us, about our company, about anything in our lives to somebody. So it is important to say that privacy in general is a human right, and that like it's your ability to actually reveal something to the public, and if you have the choice to do it, you are going to choose to whom you are going to reveal it. If it's in the public domain out there, it's public. So now it boils down to the question of whose intellectual property it is. If you hold the intellectual property and somebody utilizes your data, you should get rewarded. So it's not only about, like I'm having the private data, I want to sell it. It's also about, like it's out there, but I should get some kind of recognition towards
Right.
it. So I used to work for Assister, and you had my CEO, Nick Havriliak, I was CTO at Assister. Assister is trying to achieve it through small language models, but like to have a system where somebody comes and actually evaluates the data, and he gives the data out, and basically you're creating a monetary system around the usage of that data. So in general, these kinds of solutions are going to enable content creators to have some kind of value in them. For example, we have TikTok, we have YouTube. Creators create something and they're paid based on views, clicks, and so on.
Right.
If you publish it on a web, like we have Google, we have like the system where somebody searches. If somebody comes to your website, clicks on some kind of link on your website, you can have some kind of earnings from Google AdSense. But now, for example, if you take that data, you train a model, you put it in some kind of like foundational model, somebody creates an interface, he types some kind of question, gets an answer, you're not getting anything. Now we're coming to a question of how to utilize the public data and how to create a system where people who are content creators and publishing something on web. So we're talking about web too. Like in general, people are still publishing. Like 20 years ago in academia, as you mentioned, people started saying that everybody should publish or perish. So it's just like publishing for the sake of publishing, but like it's about the content quality at the end of the day. So having something out there enables somebody to copy it and use it. But now, do we have systems where that kind of copy is going to enable us to have some kind of reward based on it? For example, New York Times sued OpenAI for utilizing their content. And what can you do? What is OpenAI doing? They're doing the same thing as Google, but Google crawls, creates an index to search the page, gives the pages out, and somebody would visit your page if it's higher in rank or gives better content. Now we are coming to a question of like how to incentivize people to publish on a website, not just on TikTok, for example, which is a centralized platform. Because web is a decentralized platform, but we haven't solved this issue of like having people creating the content and somebody else actually paying for the use of that content. Because as we've said, like the price of the training drops, the price of the data is going to drive up, because like we need these kinds of systems. And when it comes to the quality of the data, you mentioned a really good point, and that's academia. Because in academia, usually you have two kinds of systems. Like you have like journals and conferences on one side, and you have patents on the other. If you go towards journals, you write something that's novelty. If you manage to publish it in some kind of journal that has higher impact factor, that is on Skylist, that is like really known journal, everybody who is within the field like is going to read it. Your reputation is going to drive up. People would cite you more. You're going to have some kind of reputation scheme in general. So you're going to be rewarded, like in general, of being there as a part of like academic community and contributing to the science and making a breakthrough into the unknown. If you manage to do it in general, you have like people who are going to review your papers, and if it's quality work, they're going to publish it. On the other hand, you have created something new and you want to like patent it, and you want to have some royalty of somebody using it in the next 20, 40 years, you know, what you're going to do, you're going to write it as usual. You're going to submit it to the patent offices. They're going to review it, see if somebody else have created similar before. Are there significant novelties within it? And then they are going to publish that kind of patent. And then you're going to be, you know, like rewarded if that patent is actually utilized. So we have, you know, like recognition, staying the part of academic community, you know, like, and that boils down further recognitions and incentivization or monetization abilities to publish in the journals. Within the intellectual property world of patents, you have it solved within the field of somebody also doing the review. So you had people who are evaluating the quality of what you have written. On the internet, you can create a blog, you can publish anything you want. No, like previously, before Google had novel algorithms, people were like writing a lot of keywords within their websites just to drive people on their website and have higher ranks and, you know, like have more visitors and monetize that.
Right.
Now you cannot do it because we have smarter algorithms actually detecting it. Now with AI, like AI is creating additional levels of our ability to do the search and to do the content generation and to do like the next step, the next token out of our content. So it's still our content and it's creating the next step. Like so who should get rewarded? And now this boils down to the ways how we can actually create a concept where if your data is actually utilized in some kind of way, you should have some kind of, you know, like financial subsidy or something.
And within Web3, our solution for that is helping user tokenizing their data so that they can monetizing, right? Can you go with us over this for people that are still unfamiliar with tokenizing data? How would this concept work for an end user? Would there be a platform that facilitating for this, or themselves has to deploy a smart contract?
Well, they can utilize the platforms, or they can create their own system of actually selling the data themselves. So that means they're creating the marketplace to sell their own data, and that kind of solutions are enabling, for example, that somebody who is paying, he's paying to use the data. Now, you know, like you can copy it and give it to somebody, and, you know, like say, okay, you can utilize it for these purposes. You can utilize it for this amount of time, you cannot resell it and so on. But if you want to create some kind of system where you would keep the privacy, but also his ability to do the utilization or, you know, like cross-cutting moment with his own data and so on, it boils down to these privacy-enhancing technologies. Regarding the tokenization, you would go on a platform. There are different platforms enabling, you know, like users to buy different kinds of data. We have also dark web where private data of individuals is being sold. It's kind of like a place for data, but, you know, like it's illegal, you know. So you have legal sources where you can come to certain data and you can actually utilize it. And if you want to sell it, then you would have the ability, for example, to come say this is the data I'm having, to describe it and so on. And now, you know, like different kinds of platforms are solving the issue of data quality in different kinds of ways.
Right. Very curious about that, because the moment you're creating a platform where people can contributing data and can monetize and get tokenized for it, how would we now verifying which data set is making the most impact on AI output for inferences, right? How would you determine, like, okay, this data set coming from Mr. Dejan and his team is actually making great progress for AI model training that are specialized in, say, consulting, and it is right. So how would, as a platform or as services that are facilitating like data marketplace, how is this system would be able to track which data is good for impact?
Well, that's a really, you know, like deep question.
Is that something that a lot of the business is still figured out, because of now the moment you incentivize it, people are just contributing, and now you as a platform or as a marketplace, you have to sort it out, and this is something that is not fully fleshed out and having a full-fledged solution yet, right? From as far as I understand.
Yeah. So in general, you're creating a reputation scheme on the data level. So what you're trying to achieve is actually to say what kind of data has the more quality. You can do it in two ways. You can ask the machine, and now we are asking LLMs everything. For example, if we give an LLM something that's null, that the LLM or any kind of foundation model doesn't have whatsoever, what is going to say? It's going to tell you the level of similarity it has, with his own training set. So it won't say you it's good or bad. It's going to say to you, oh, it's much different than what I'm having. So if there is a lot of difference there, it can be either a total nonsense, like total bullshit, or it can be a total novelty. If it's a total novelty, like you're creating a breakthrough. So that data should be utilized to retrain the model to set the coefficients or the weights of the neural network, everything inside, like to be more precise, more fine-tuned, to have better outputs, to utilize the new knowledge within it, But if it's, like a bunch of some kind of random words that do not connect to each other, whatsoever, it would detect that there is no structure. But what if it seems like it's smart, but it's connecting something that's not connectable within the means of reality? Can it say to us, okay, like maybe it would say, this is good, this is great, this is a novelty. For persons, it's similar. If I tell you something new, like we're going to say how much you sense it is a novelty, and then your common sense is going to say, okay, like, is this really a breakthrough? Can we really trust this kind of input? And so on. So asking the machine to do the quality checks, it's still hard. That's why we have, like reinforcement learning from human feedback still. Like, because it is a concept where you're actually asking people to give some kind of inputs. And for example, if you're publishing something new, that means that some kind of concept of people doing reviews is going to be the ones where we are going to have some kind of data qualifying or like some kind of metric system within it. For example, when you go on Quora or you go on Stack Overflow, for example, you have likes and dislikes. It gives you indication if something is the quality content for the context you're asking. Now, for example, if you ask the language model and it gives you some kind of answer, you can say, okay, like I like it or I dislike it, or like that the underlying facts that you have utilized within this are not true. Use this source, or I'm going to give you some kind of indication around it. So we have the base data, but we still have a lot of common sense information within the people. And people are, we need the systems in order for people to have some kind of incentivization to use their common sense knowledge and actually feed the models in general. Because without this kind of system, we won't be able to have better predictions or like predictions of actually novel tokens within the foundational models and so on.
Right. And the follow up to that is, okay, now we have people contributing data to the ecosystem. How do we ensure the privacy and security of that data? Because as far as I've known, some other partners that we have done this podcast with us, they are doing tokenizing data contribution specifically on location based data, meaning that you can contributing anything about your location or the weathers or the traffic, and you get reward for it, because these in other enterprises that are running AI models, let's say optimizing the logistical route for truck driver, they need this. But now, because you are contributing data about your location, you as a system, and they are not sure about, and they're still fleshing out their security system on how do they protecting the data, because it's quite sensitive about the user location. Is this something that we as people that are specializing in data should be worried, especially when we asking people to contributing sensitive data? And how would you, for you, what is your thought on this and some of the solution that you're thinking of?
Well, in general, if we are talking about privacy, basically and data security in general, you should have some kind of layered security approach. With all of these privacy enhancing technologies, you still have, like either latency of communication or performance issues with computation and so on. So in general, if you want to keep the data private, it should be kept within some kind of like isolated means. So within the local web network, within the system where you have database that's protected, that only certain people can access, doing authentication, authorization mechanisms, and so on. So there is no other way of actually us preserving the privacy beyond going from simple means of what we are having right now. So if you're, for example, giving your location data, so you have like longitude, latitude, the things with some kind of timestamp, and you're giving some kind of additional information there. Yes, you're sharing a lot about your private space, about your presence being somewhere where if you accept service level agreement, you're selectively sharing it, it's fine. But if somebody is utilizing that data without your consent, now we're coming to a question of what to do there, So what we can do is actually anonymize the data or mask the data. So, like we can add certain level of noise to the data. Maybe you aren't here, maybe you're 10 feet north or something similar. So, like maybe you aren't there exactly at this millisecond, but you're a few minutes later and so on. So adding noise in some kind of differential privacy way while outputting the data to the public is something that's going to keep your privacy. And the idea about differential privacy, and it is a technology that's actually easy to use if you're using it in a proper way, is to actually tweak the outputs so that nobody can conclude that within the larger data set, you're the unit inside. So that's one of the ways how those things can be done when doing the output privacy. So we're talking about putting the data outside. But if we want to keep it, we want to do some kind of computation, still like confidential computing is the way to go.
Right. And one last question before we wrap up this this podcast. Very lovely for the insight that you share. One last question is for our builders and developer community here in Vietnam and in Southeast Asia as well. They are very much interested in exploring different mechanism or creating platform for data crowdsourcing and or helping user tokenize the data. What are some advice you can give them exploring this intersection of data, AI, and Web3? And what are some ideas that they can start venturing on when they're trying to build a project that is based on this topic?
Well, as you've said, like combination of Web3 and AI, we're talking about decentralized AI. We're talking about two totally different technologies. Now, like within the Web3 space, we're talking about decentralization, transparency, being totally open, while within the AI space, we're utilizing some kind of data in order to train the model, which we want to keep private to ourselves in order to have the competitive advantage of only having something, like while still, like we have ownership on both sides being a thing. So ownership as a value in both ways is the intersection of these two spaces. So thinking outside of the box, finding technology that exists, if we go towards tokenization, you're talking about tokens that are being utilized on a single platform that enables tokenization. So enables, for example, smart contract implementation whatsoever. If you're talking about AI, you have different kinds of algorithms, different kinds of solutions, different kinds of levels of accuracy, different kinds of data, like structured, semi-structured, non-structured. You have numeric data, you have like textual data, imagery, audio, and so on. So if you're thinking about solving certain parts of like AI stack on one side, you should be thinking, like how much decentralization am I gaining by only having a simple token with some kind of centralized platform, or I'm going to do it fully decentralized, or only training is going to be done in a decentralized way, but then inference can be done in some kind of centralized way. Am I going to do it within the enclaves or not? Am I going to utilize multi-party computation in order to, like, exchange some kind of data further on before training the model? Or, for example, if you're utilizing the data of multiple organizations, they can train the model together by utilizing federated learning without revealing their data. To everybody can actually have the model at the end, and that model can be utilized to have more precise outputs from the input to the output. So thinking from the stream, what data do I have? What kind of queries or inferences or like inputs am I going to have? What kind of outputs am I going to have? What kind of technologies are out there? What level of decentralization am I enabling? What kind of consensus mechanism am I using? Like decentralized AI has like a couple of dozen of startups trying to like solve different levels of the stack. Like within the whole Web3 space, like you have layer 0, layer 1, layer 2, and so on. Similarly, decentralized AI, you have those ones who are providing like base ground of like trying to solve like base problems. Then you have like BitTensor, for example, trying to do it in a more decentralized way. Then you have some others who are trying to utilize it in different kinds of way from the standpoint of utility, like different kinds of data monetization strategies, different kinds of agentic system enablers through NFTs or some kind of tokenization mechanisms. And then you have like data providers on top who are thinking about ways how we can like run the whole verticals of these kinds of systems in order to have the better outputs and so on. So thinking outside of the box, utilizing the technologies, seeing what technologies are being brought, seeing the other products being built, thinking about your own competitiveness within the field and so on. Lately, I'm thinking about ways how to detect how much certain information is being used in the output and connecting that information to the source. So how much certain sources are used in the outputs, and to give some kind of like information around it. So having it like implemented on some kind of simple retrieval augmented generation is easier. Like vector is owned by somebody, it's easy. But for example, thinking about the standpoint of how to embed it within the neural network to have like apart from the output, this is the content generated. This is the content generated based on this data, and we have utilized this much of these levels of data so that those sources can be like listed as sources. And then if you have them listed, then you can do some kind of distribution of the funds, like some kind of data crowdfunding deal about it. And there are startups, for example, like Prorata AI, who are trying to achieve these kinds of things.
Right. Thank you so much for your session today, Dejan. I really love the topic of data crowdsourcing. So far, we covered first is on this why the term is data is new gold and oil. You clarifies for us, and I agree, as the AI model training is getting cheaper. Obviously, the next is the data strategy game. What is where are we getting this data from, and how are we incentivize people to actually contributing data? I would say ideally on the public data, so that we can use this to further again foster AI for innovation. And very lovely to hear that you have different solution for tokenizing, not only tokenizing data, but also addressing the some of the key aspect of how we evaluating good data contribution to actually making sure that this data is making impact on the AI inferences and also security as well. So thank you for your time. Lovely to have you share with us today. And thank you for our community joining in, listening to this podcast. And stay tuned for our next episode in the upcoming time. All right. See you guys. And thank you,
Thank you very
Dejan,
much.
for joining us today.